If you're not already subscribed to this YouTube channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button now, along with the bell icon so you can be notified whenever a new video is posted. And if you're already subscribed, check and make sure that YouTube hasn't unsubscribed you. And of course, be sure to give the video a like as well as share it on your social media. The white supremacists hate that. And now, the Sunday address.
Flashback.
Bari Weiss doesn't know anything about television. I suspect that before it's all over, she'll show everybody precisely why her opinions were not respected at the New York Times and why, when she started her blog, she was utterly dependent on billionaires to fund it, as opposed to doing like the Times and, building an actual readership. As Kendrick Lamar said, you can't fake influence. Some people think that having billionaires buy them online ads and paying to place their names into publications is influence, but it's not. Exposure is not influence. The entire point of what the Ellisons are trying to do is to reach and indoctrinate young people. Bari Weiss can't do that. She herself showed nothing but contempt for the younger generation. All she can do at best is probably try to reach out to a few aging Gen Xers and a few hard-headed millennials, and that's going to become more and more difficult. Bari Weiss has neither the attitude nor the aptitude for what it is she's attempting to do. If I was a betting man, I'd give it a few months before they have to bring in someone or a number of people to try to teach Bari Weiss what television news actually is and to basically run things for her. What the world is Bari Weiss going to do to actually bring people to watch CBS in any sort of large numbers? Give it about 5 years, if she lasts that long, and I suspect history will repeat itself. Bari Weiss will once again wind up announcing her resignation as she throws in the towel, or her sugar daddies will realize that being the front woman for a billionaire-funded blog isn't the same as running a TV network, and she'll find herself having to leave.
End of Flashback.
Talk about failing to read the room. In this case, the newsroom. Well, she's only been on the job for a few months and she's already fallen flat on her face. I would love to say that this is way ahead of schedule, but actually it's not. Bari Weiss thought to herself that she was going to make a big splash. Obviously, this woman has been spending a lot of time huffing her own farts. Bari Weiss is no on-air anchor, and it shows. Apparently, she thought that putting Charlie Kirk's widow on the air would get that Fox News crowd that she's desperately trying to appeal to for so many years to show up, but of course it didn't. And that's because they don't want Diet Fox News, they want the real thing. And even if they were willing to settle for Diet Fox News, they certainly wouldn't want it from Bari Weiss. And the word is already out that this woman's a Zionist, so the same people who basically are spitting in Ben Shapiro's face these days and deciding that Nick Fuentes sounds good to them, these are the same people who are looking at Bari Weiss and going, what are you still doing here? But the fact that she even pulled this stunt and decided that she was going to be hosting this town hall herself with no experience in television whatsoever, it verifies what we've said all along. She couldn't get anyone to visit her blog, and now she's working her magic on CBS, which has become a double entendre now, because if you're watching Bari Weiss's CBS, then that's all you do. CBS. And I don't know what's worse, trying to retool the Tiffany network into being Fox News Light, or actually believing that people were going to tune in droves just to see Charlie Kirk's widow. Well, actually, I do know what's worse. Bari Weiss. And what exactly is this talentless clown going to do to appeal to those younger viewers that the Ellisons are pathetically hoping to capture? Well, her next move is to bring in people like Alan Dershowitz. Because that's what Gen Z wants to see, an elderly ambulance chaser creep who looks like a goblin. Yeah, that's what this new CBS under her has been missing, because we all know how the young folks really like to tune in to see Dershowitz on cable, right? The reason that Bari Weiss is failing is because of who and what she is. She's made her living by catering to millionaires and billionaires, elderly white men who are the elites of society, so she's in tune with them and trying to figure out what it is that they want. The kind of conversation that appeals to them, though, is totally different than what would appeal to people who are not rich, old, or white men. Bari Weiss has only one skill, though, that's to suck up to power. And that's good for fundraising, which is what she's done her entire life, but it fails the instant you try it outside of that small circle of wealthy old white men. But what she thought that she was going to try to do is to use the same kind of staged tactics that people like Roger Ailes used, such as putting this interview in front of a so-called town hall. But she packed the audience with right-wing operatives who were going to stay on script. Nobody was going to ask any tough questions. If they asked any questions at all, they would clap like trained seals, and it would all come off dry as chalk. Well, for someone who tried to use Roger Ailes' playbook, Bari Weiss should have actually studied what Ailes did. When Roger Ailes was running Fox News, he was never on air. because he didn't try to be the star of the network. He didn't want to be. Don Hewitt over at CBS, when he was running 60 Minutes, he didn't try to be the star of the network either. But here Bari Weiss is as the new editor-in-chief, and what's her first move? She's trying to be the new star of the network. She doesn't have the looks, the intelligence, or the charisma to pull it off, and that's why she's failing. Instead of this so-called town hall coming off as Erika Kirk's TV debut, it came off as Bari Weiss's debut, and obviously audiences are giving it thumbs down. Does anyone know who the editor-in-chief was at CBS before Weiss took over? Does anyone know who the editor-in-chief is for any other network? Me neither. There's a reason that editors don't conduct interviews, because that's not their job. The editor-in-chief's job is to decide what the network will air and what it won't. Bari Weiss worked at the New York Times for all of 5 minutes, and it's the same there too. The editor-in-chief of the New York Times' job is to decide what the Times would or would not publish. But then again, looking at Bari Weiss's resume, they didn't publish much of her scribblings. Editors understand that their job is not to write any of the articles that they publish, much less conduct interviews with people. That's what they've got reporters and anchors for. What this means, though, is that Bari Weiss feels that she can't trust the people that she's supervising at CBS to sell the soap for her, because we know what her real job is. It's to be the front woman for the Ellisons. She realizes that the people at CBS are not with her. They recognize her as being nothing more than a talentless hack who had to leave the New York Times because she wasn't competent enough to do actual journalism. So with absolutely no experience in television, to say nothing of television news, she was forced on them by her billionaire sugar daddies. That's the reason why she gets no respect at CBS. She's a Nepo baby and everybody can see it. While the rest of them had to go to journalism school or at the very least work their way up the ladder in the world of network television, Bari Weiss just got dropped in there out of nowhere. Her total lack of competence is only part of the problem, though. The biggest issue is Bari Weiss is an egomaniac. She craves attention because she's been ignored her entire life, and now everybody sees exactly why. There were a lot of folks who didn't know who Bari Weiss was before this so-called town hall interview, but now they know exactly who she is and they don't like her. So if Bari Weiss has been frustrated with being ignored her entire life, and she is, well, I got bad news for her. She's still being ignored. Except now she's no longer being ignored by the unfortunate editors and co-workers at the New York Times cursed to work with her. Now she's being ignored by the American public. It was like watching a self-important librarian having a conversation with a self-important soccer mom. Nobody cared. Bari Weiss, though, she's trying to make a name for herself. She's trying to compensate for her complete lack of talent, knowledge, or charisma by making herself the star of the network. And I guess she figured all she had to do was sit in front of the cameras and it would work, right? Because that's what they're used to doing in the white media. They're used to conjuring magic. Far as they're concerned, if they simply say something, that makes it so. The audiences and or readers are all a bunch of idiots, and they'll just believe whatever slop is put in front of them. That being the case, all you gotta do is just put any moron in front of the camera, and the people watching will follow them like a bunch of trained lemmings. Yeah, that's how television works, right? Okay, Bari Weiss forced her way into the spotlight, and how did that work out? She literally proved that she wasn't ready for prime time, just like I and so many other people said, but it's worse than that. I had said that there would be people at CBS who would try to educate her on how television actually works, and that they would basically be running things while she attempted and no doubt failed to get up to speed. But clearly, if there was anybody at CBS silly enough to actually try to educate this harpy, they gave her up as a lost cause. She's so full of herself, so consumed with ego, she actually thinks she's television broadcast material. She doesn't seem to realize there's a reason she was barely on any of those cable news shows, and nobody, not even Fox News, was willing to offer her her own show. In fact, I don't even know if they even had her on a panel. She doesn't have the goods. She looks like a librarian, talks like a 4chan commenter, and acts like a child. A really dumb child. See, this is what happens when you got somebody who thinks that they know what they're doing, as opposed to somebody who actually does. I'm sure that in Erika Kirk's otherwise empty head, she imagines to herself that she's a 21st century version of Roger Ailes. But she doesn't actually do any of the things that Roger Ailes did. Roger Ailes worked in TV his entire life. So by the 1990s, when it came time for him to start Fox News, he understood the business better than his peers. Rupert Murdoch brought in his people from Australia to advise him on how to start a news network, but they didn't understand TV, not at the high level that Ailes did, so he had to explain it to them.
Fox News will be programmed for the 90s. Fast, loud, edgy. Tabloid TV.
And Ailes famously said wrong.
Cable is about one thing, niche.
And what is that niche?
Well, I think it is conservatives.
Roger Ailes was right. Cable TV is all about niche. The problem for Bari Weiss is she's not working in cable. She's working on network TV. The game isn't niche. The game is mass market appeal because that's how you get and retain advertiser revenue in the first place. And the problem for Bari Weiss is even if she was on cable, she didn't have much experience there either, other than being a guest on one of their panel shows. Bari Weiss's problem is that she's a dyed-in-the-wool Zionist who's catering to an audience of two. Larry and David Ellison, her sponsors. Sure, she believes what she's saying, and they love every word of it, but the problem is nobody else does. The latest news is Bari Weiss has threatened to put on more of these pathetic town hall events. I guess as she sees it, the real problem wasn't her stinking up the joint. The problem was she wasn't serving up enough of this dreck. I, for one, hope that she continues with it, because the more she does it, the worse it's going to get. And that being the case, it's not enough that she has a high-profile L. Let's go ahead and give her a whole string of them. Charlie Kirk's widow was the only arrow in her quiver, and let's be totally honest. If that woman's name was Erika Jones rather than Erika Kirk, would anybody care who she was? The entire reason for pulling this stunt was this was supposed to be Bari Weiss's launch pad to show people how she was going to do news. It was going to be her setting a new tone at CBS. And she set a tone all right, a dial tone. So if she does put on any more of these man bites dog interviews, I have to wonder what kind of so-called town hall she's going to try next. My money would be either on Benjamin Netanyahu as her next so-called guest, where she'll give him all sorts of softball questions like, how does it feel to be the hero who slaughtered so many people in Gaza? Or if Netanyahu is too busy committing war crimes to come in for a chat, she'll almost certainly bring in the orange man. All you got to do is tell him that you got a camera and some compliments and he'll show right up. And what will she say to him? We already know. This guy's basically in bed with the Ellisons. It's a mutual admiration society. The problem is about the only place where this kind of thing would actually get big ratings, especially an interview with Trump, would be if it was on Fox News. Only problem is Bari Weiss isn't on Fox News. We've seen this train wreck before. Jay Leno was given his own show after he left The Tonight Show, and that didn't work. Megyn Kelly had her own show, and that crashed and burned in spectacular fashion. This is what happens when you got amateurs who have been getting by on other people's dime. Even if you do have talent and charisma like a Jay Leno, or even if you're somebody who can at least read from a teleprompter without sounding like you're reading the phone book, like Megyn Kelly managed to do, that doesn't change the fact that merely bringing in a bunch of guests for a talk isn't going to cover up the fact that you don't have a compelling product. You certainly don't have anybody compelling to present it to the public. Bari Weiss thought that she was going to be the face of CBS, and she has become the face of it now. The face of an embarrassment. But the Ellisons aren't about to demote her or even yank her off the air, not even after this flop. After all, she wasn't put there because they thought that she was going to bring in great ratings. She was put there because she's seen as being politically reliable. She's aligned with them. She repeats all of their stale talking points. She agrees with everything that they say. And as far as they're concerned, that's all she has to do. Well, unfortunately for them, if you're going to be keeping a broadcast network alive, you're going to have to do more than kiss the behinds of your pampered Nepo baby boss and his oligarch father. I'm sure that Bari Weiss convinced herself that because she was on broadcast television and not cable, she had potentially access to a far larger audience than, say, Fox News. But the problem is, she has a far less compelling product. At least Roger Ailes understood that the decrepit racists that he was trying to appeal to were a bunch of perverts, so he might as well go ahead and put on some scrawny bottle blonde heifers at the end of the table, tell them to wear some short skirts so you can see their bony little legs. He knew what kind of soap that he was selling, and he understood that his target audience wasn't going to be showing up to watch any news. What they wanted to see was news theater. Some people who would get in front of a camera, they would pretend like they were doing actual journalism, but in reality, it was nothing more than comfort food for racists and bigots. It was meant for them to get a nice little sugar rush, seeing people dress up and pretend to be genuine news people, when in reality, they were nothing but confirmation bias for the lowest common denominator in the society. And this is who Bari Weiss thought was going to come running to CBS? People who had turned their backs on network news decades ago? And the younger audiences that she's trying and failing to reach, they don't trust network news. These guys don't even care, not even if you throw them some red meat from time to time, which is what she's been doing. And the part that's particularly ironic is, the only celebration, if it can be called that came at the news of Bari Weiss being put over CBS came from people who can't even be bothered to tune in to watch her. They were praising her, oh, we're going to get rid of all that woke, that liberal bias. See, people are going to tune in now. People are just sick and tired of it. Yeah, those morons and idiots who are pretending to praise Bari Weiss, they were all happy simply because as far as they were concerned, this was giving the middle finger to people they didn't like. Well, it doesn't matter if these same people decide that they're not actually going to watch this new CBS content. It's just like Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire's little movies. These guys are putting stuff out there, but nobody's watching it. And that being the case, it shows that there is no real overwhelming audience for this stuff outside of Fox News. But then again, the Fox News crowd, the 65 to dead demo, these guys can't pay attention to anything for any length of time. That is, unless it's wearing a skirt and they get to fantasize about her. That's about the only thing they can actually pay attention to. So even if Bari Weiss called herself trying to do real news, she wouldn't know what real news was. That's the reason why she couldn't hack it at the New York Times. And even if she tried to do it, the people she's trying to appeal to, they don't want real news. What they want is simply to be told what they already believe. And they can get that from a variety of other sources. She and her benefactors came in basically saying that what people don't want is all of this liberal bias. And what she proved to everybody is that what viewers don't want is Bari Weiss. So the great right-wing takeover of CBS is going about as well as I told you that it would. These guys think to themselves that because they have a lot of money, what that also means is they've got a lot of influence and persuasion too, and it doesn't work that way. Bari Weiss has made herself the star of the network. She's forced herself onto the airwaves, and I'm sure that she tells herself that basically if America just hears more of her, that they're going to like her. The same way that these rich white millionaires that she sucks up to, oh, they love to give her a pat on the head, and she thinks to herself, well, I mean, the audience for network TV is old too. They're all a bunch of old people by and large, so I can basically play to them the same way, right? It's basically the same thing, only they don't have any money like Larry Ellison does. That's what she tells herself. And what she's realizing is, no, the problem is far deeper than that. The reason that she couldn't hack it at the New York Times, the reason that her so-called free press had anemic numbers across the board, is because when it comes down to it, people don't want to hear her message, and they don't care for the messenger either. The lesson that Bari Weiss is simply too arrogant and pampered to understand is that white power can buy you a platform, but it can't buy you legitimacy. Or class. Good evening, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Nico, Stephen 12, Rod Spade, FBA Queen, and Immigrant B1. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.